second half of the morning session for the George Washington University Entrepreneurship Conference, focusing on resiliency. Let me start by just thanking all of you for participating in our conference session. We hope that you all enjoy the entire conference as much as we've enjoyed planning it and preparing it for all of our guests. My name is Shauna Swansberg. I'm going to be monitoring the session you're in right now. And the topic for our session will be the application of creativity and innovations to teaching in the online environment. We've been so lucky to have such a great group of people help with the initial planning and preparation that went into today's session. And I just want to take a quick second to thank them individually now. So let me just, there we go. So here's our team, starting with Kagla. She's a BA candidate with a double major in marketing, innovation, and entrepreneurship with a minor in psychology. We have Michael. He's a VP of International Business Development at A4M. Ying is a graduate student of Master's in Management program. Dr. Theodore is a Division Chief of Advanced Bariatric Surgery at Brookdale Hospital and One Brooklyn Health Medical System, as well as an Assistant Professor of Surgery at SUNY Downstate Medical Center. Isabel is a Bachelor in Science with a double concentration in Finance and Entrepreneurship with a minor in Organizational Science. Our moderator, I'm a graduate student in the Master's of Management program. Mokhtar is a sales executive at Hilton Grand Vacations. Shu is our graduate student in the Masters of Human Resource Management program. Zayu is a graduate student in the Masters of Accounting program, and Brittany is a compliance analyst at Lockheed Martin. So thank you all for putting so much work into this. And now, of course, for the reason that we are all here, we're very fortunate to have Dr. David Holliday here to give us his perspectives on creative innovations to teaching in the online environment. Dr. Halliday's research interests include business strategy, corporate strategy, and business ethics. While doing research to improve and advance the fields of innovation, entrepreneurship, and strategy, he would much rather be spending time teaching or making short strategy videos for YouTube. He's received a BA from Stanford University, an MBA from Yale, and a PhD in strategy and entrepreneurship from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Dr. Holliday has been the recipient of the Dean's Teaching Award in the spring of 2020, as well as the PMBA Student Choice Award in the spring of 2019. I would like to thank Dr. Holliday again for his time in this session today. For those of us that have had the opportunity to learn from him and benefit from his interesting and unique approach to education, I think we could spend all day introducing him, but I'll let him show you why we are all so lucky to have him here today and as a faculty member right here at George Washington. So you can go ahead and take it away.
Wow, thanks, Shauna. It looks like my hair has grown a little bit since COVID started. This is a stark reminder. Let's pull up my PowerPoint. Here we go. While we're doing that, special thanks to Shauna, Tammy, TJ, Michael, Iman, ICSB in general, for everyone else for coming. In fact, I see quite a few former students here, and I just want to give a special shout out to Phil. Phil, you know who you are. Thank you, man. Okay, so here we go. Agenda for today. So we're going to do a little bit on teaching, but this is actually really communicating in general, even in an entrepreneurial environment in the post-COVID world. And so we'll talk about work from home. We'll talk about efficiency of this new online communication environment. We will talk about software selection. You guys are young, so I won't spend much time on that. You know what I'm going to be talking about before we get there. And my real interest right now, I do strategy for a living, so to speak, but there's a management topic that I'm really gotten interested in, and that's building culture within the virtual company. So we'll spend some time talking about that, because I think one thing that we all feel is going to be a bit disconnected unless you're really, really lucky to have a great company or organization. We're all likely to feel a bit disconnected in this new post-COVID environment. And at the end, this has inspired me and got me thinking about a lot of business startup ideas. And I just hope some of you are entrepreneurs and or software engineers that think that some of these might be interesting problems to tackle. They're things that I think are sorely missing from our business environment right now. So to get the information that I got today, I talked to my friends who are entrepreneurs. I talked to my wife, who's an entrepreneur. I talked to people in healthcare, and then I looked at how the teaching program for my students at the very least, has worked the past few years. So we talked to a product manager at SureScripts, a number of doctors, director of emergency medicine, a couple of emergency ER physicians, senior communications director. Unfortunately, this person wanted a really broad degree of anonymity, but they work for a fantastic company and they have a killer job title, senior communications director at a large medical company. That's about all I can say. Pharma sales rep, and that actually doesn't quite describe the position. It's really enterprise sales. So this person has a really fantastic insight on what sales and communication look like in this post-COVID environment. And then other, general non-healthcare, as I mentioned, entrepreneurial. And I want to give a special shout out to my in-30 class, noon Wednesdays, who helped me a lot with this yesterday. So thank you all. I've been teaching online since 2008. So when COVID hit, the initial switch to a fully online environment took me like an hour. It took other people months, but I was fully prepared for this. So I didn't get a sense, I didn't have a personal sense that things had changed until April. And in April, there's a sad event. So I attended a large online funeral, and over 3,000 people attended. I wouldn't have been invited if it had been a traditional funeral. So quite interesting. So this digital technology platform allowed me and lots of other people to connect in a very humanistic way. And so it's inspiring to see how such a large event could be produced with such interactivity. It was ultimately beneficial and meaningful to so many people that, again, couldn't otherwise have attended a funeral in real life. And so it gave me a sense that for the first time, digital technology was really here to reaffirm our humanity. And it showed how Zoom can be used in a number of ways to help people positively connect. So now, all right, to switch from the tragedy, and we'll see some positive things that you've probably experienced, in that the work from home Zoom environment is not that bad. We are getting a sense of engagement with our colleagues. We're having Zoom family reunions. We're going to Zoom birthday parties. We're having Zoom baby showers. And in many cases, these aren't replicating what you would see in real life. I know that the baby showers and birthday parties that I've gone to online are for people that I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. I'm in California. They're somewhere else. So it gave me a chance to connect. I'm sure all of you have the same experience. We'll continue on this, introduce this idea of culture, shared engagement online as we move through, but let's do some practical things real quick. So let's say you're planning a Zoom meeting, you're communicating, you could be teaching, could be working with your project mates, could be running an entrepreneurial company. The simplest best practices, and all of you know these, so we go through these really quickly. Meetings should be small enough. Only essential people are there. In other words, if you think someone might not be paying attention and actively engaged, say in a whiteboard session, they shouldn't be there. If they're not, if they should be there and they're not, well, then that's a human resources and management issue. So not a communication issue. So meetings should be small. Technology issues simply aren't a thing. Everybody gets a solid training opportunity. I think any of my students that have had me, honestly, anytime in the past few years, know that there's a little bit of a learning curve because I've always used different software than what you're used to. And so we do that, we go through it, we try to get you on. And then at some point though, there's, we hand off responsibility to you for managing that technology issue. And the same thing holds for you when you're managing a meeting. Everybody gets sufficient training, but then the training becomes an expectation going forward. Large meetings give us something different. We can have webinar format, you can have client sales formats. Large online meetings, think not a divisional meeting, but your office, like your general job title, say, meeting. It can be somebody lecturing and talking at you, or you can use the technology at hand, and Zoom, Microsoft Teams, kind of the two leading technologies in the space, offer at the very least the ability to do breakouts, chats, shared Google documents, the needs determine the technology. I often find that I'm doing the opposite, and that's bad. So don't let the technology go, ooh, here's a bell and whistle. It's a toy I can use. Let's do a breakout just because I now have the opportunity to do a breakout. So you got to be careful to let the needs drive the technology and not the other way around. Larger groups, one thing is to not try something that you can't accomplish. Large groups, and I had an online class for full-time MBA of 71 in August. And that, normally if you've been in my normal online classes, it's 20, we can all communicate. But 71, not everyone can communicate. So we needed chat moderation. There was a lot more that went into it. And when done well, I think everybody had a great experience. But estimating what is actually needed and not under preparing, especially for work-related communication, is critical. So make sure you have the resources in order to be able to do things well. So everybody take a second. This is what a sample would look like. Let's say you're in a meeting with 30 people and you're trying to discuss the work from home efficiency as you see it in your office. That's actually a great opportunity to have a breakout, because no matter how formal the experience, we can actually use some of these things like the education type technology to get people to think more. And let's say, hey, how has Zoom changed, positive or negative, post-COVID environment, meeting efficiency at your organization? Keep it bite-sized and then give one example for why or why not. And then you can have other breakout examples. So we don't have the technology to do breakouts in the webinar format today, but everybody take 30 seconds, countdown. I got my trusty stopwatch here. Everybody take 30 seconds to answer this question. Has Zoom improved or decreased meeting efficiency, or has meeting efficiency changed since COVID? And think about why or why not. So 30 seconds starting 7 seconds ago. Ten seconds. All right, yeah. Michael's saying nothing like our breakout sessions, because you don't quite know what you're going to get when you get out of it. So here, this is not going to be a collegial answer. I'm just going to tell you the answer. This is purely my own observations about the world and talking with people trying to do informal research. But I think there is no excuse for companies to not have 30% more efficient meetings, perhaps more meetings, but at the very least 30% more efficient meetings. And we'll talk about what that means here. You've got the obvious things: fewer food breaks, less chit chat. I personally miss the other professors in my department are really witty, and I love listening to them just shoot the shit, so to speak. And that they always crack me up. So we're not really getting that online, but on the plus side, it is very time efficient. So less interrupting each other. The great news about Zoom, in fact, I'll do all three of these at the same time. The great news about Zoom is that there's room for one person to talk. If you overtalk somebody on Zoom, man, it's worse than overtalking somebody in real life. So that's one thing. Only one person can talk at a time. And then when you're on, it's a very lonely experience being in front of the camera like this. I'm very aware of my time and your time. There's this little clock in your head watching, going, uh-oh, are people still paying attention? Let's move this content forward. So there's less talking for the sake of talking. And since Phil is here, let me give him a second thank you and a shout out, because Phil made a fantastic comment yesterday when we talked. For online Zoom meetings, you better have your agenda ready. If you're calling a meeting for 4 or 5 people, these are my words, you're on stage on Zoom. And so the Zoom environment forces you to develop executive level skills for meeting management. And Phil shouted out a former VP that he saw that had fantastic efficiency skills for this, and it pushed him in that direction. So the Zoom environment is actually useful for generating increased efficiency. in communication. There may be negatives to that, but way beyond my scope, but I just wanted to point this out as an introduction. The software selection is exactly what you would expect. Everyone is on Zoom. Healthcare needs, of course, special HIPAA compliance. Slack, can be used by everybody. MS Teams makes really positive appearances from all the people that I talk to, from doctors to product managers to executives. People had, I'm the Microsoft fanboy, so I was really impressed with what people were able to do efficiency-wise with Teams. And then something like, new communications like Doxy, if you're a patient forward or thinking of starting a patient forward company, they offer HIPAA compliant telecommunication options. Salesforce was shouted out, but only by a pharma rep, so small sample size there. And almost every company split into either a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom, Google, Slack. Okay, so you need Zoom, Google Docs, Slack to replicate the experience of Microsoft Teams. That's a much cheaper, Zoom, Google, Slack is a much cheaper option than Teams, but that's your kind of communication options for the common person. MS Teams replicates all of those functionalities, keeping permanent chats, keeping permanent documents, all in the same place. So again, was not expecting to find this amount of positive support from Microsoft. But yeah, that's what the data is saying. It's not rocket science. Honestly, if I had to predict in 2010, I thought the future would be here sooner. I was like, why can't we do this with Skype? Why did Skype, you pick a bad word so much throughout its existence? But we had shared Google Docs. Why do people not use them, et cetera? So we are finally using the technology in a way that I think is efficient. So essentially everything requires a meetings plus chat plus real-time document collaboration. Again, whether you're at the entrepreneurship stage or you're trying to manage a product in a 100,000 person tech company. Another thing that was repeated was something to the effect of technology was always at our company. And in 2019, it was, do I have to? In 2020, you get the opposite. It's, oh my gosh, all right, I learned MS Teams, or I learned how to use Slack properly. And now I love getting stuff done. It was just the hurdle that forced us to become 2010, not even 2020, but it's the hurdle that forced people to actually use technology in a productive way. There's another great interview with enterprise healthcare sales. This referred to as pharma rep in this data set. But the work from home brought healthcare into the future. And I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly, but I love these quotes. I don't want to get the specifics are fairly complicated, but EMR, electronic medical records, perhaps somebody can help me there. Okay, so EMR, but to get these things done, you can't fax in this environment. So to get these things done, the money from pharma was essentially forcing, dragging doctors, kicking and screaming, as us in this case is enterprise sales software, and pharma, dragging legacy business, meaning doctors' offices, kicking and screaming into the modern world. And actually, the profit motive was such that the pharma companies were actually paying to have all of this done so that they can create efficiencies and sell their drugs going forward in this new environment. So he said, "Killing the manila folder of despair." One of my favorite quotes here. There we go. Same thing, profit motive, telemedicine, the repayment fees went down. And so doctors started doing more visits with their patients. And that actually drove, for say, MS patients, a dramatically improved ability to do data management, data analysis, and patient care. So some really interesting stories. So this is, I don't know, just a way to say 2019, things were massively in the Stone Age. And in many cases, there's been such a big jump forward. But here we are, near and dear to my heart. The idea of the culture desert in this modern work from home communication environment. So this, I don't know, perhaps to me at least, this looks like the ideal office environment, suite view, colleagues close at hand, a chessboard nearby. But since work from home, I think we're seeing this. This is our daily experience. And this is fine for productivity, but it's not great for building engagement, community, and what we might think of as long-term productivity. We can't do this forever. So how do we get back to an environment that looks more like this online? And number one, build mission, create that culture, continue to create that culture. This is a what you should do, not a how. This is a what right here. But again, fantastic quote. Thank you, Phil. Our mission is to make healthcare better. Healthcare allows for a contribution to something greater than just the job. Solving complex problems, that's for any employee, but healthcare allows for intangibles or the creation of emotional capital. And any company that has this amount of buy-in from their employees and is not using it or attempting to foster it is failing, to be quite honest. So it doesn't need to be in healthcare. And so how can we intrinsically motivate? Let's say the motivation is there. How can the company continue to intrinsically motivate in this environment? And there's hurdles, all the hurdles you think of. Where's the tacit knowledge? Where's the office chit chat? How do we take clients out to lunch? This is for enterprise sales. How does that happen? Enterprise sales is all about personal relationships. Without that, what are they going to do to sell? How are we going to replace this work chit chat? So I love to gossip. There are no work-related outlets for that, for me at least right now. And I've heard about, from a number of companies, 3 or 4 companies, something like a Slack water cooler channel. And I immediately am thinking of a large company with a Slack water cooler channel. I'm thinking lolcats and just general sadness and despair. So this is not what any of us want from the companies that we're working for. We want to be able to talk, but we want to be able to talk like humans, not like robots that have to communicate through the medium of a corporation, a large corporation that's monitoring what we're doing. So I've looked at 2 types of companies, one type of company in particular, and those are companies that are native work from home. In other words, companies that were built to have employees work remotely. And there are a lot of companies like that. My wife's company's like that. She's been a native work from home company since 2016, so predating COVID by a number of years. The person at the communications director is at a native work from home company since 2008. Or perhaps even further back. And that's pretty impressive. So how do these type of companies manage this culture and relationship problem? Number one, my wife's company has Slack channels for the kind of 18 to 20 full-time employees. Well, it's changed since COVID, but that would be there. And it's a little different from a large company. I don't know how a large company would manage this, but this is ability to communicate on sports and TV and what's going on in the office, who's getting divorced in the industry, not among the workers, of course, but who, they all know their industry. So what's the dirty gossip there? So all the kind of things that bond people together. Communications researchers have found that gossip has some negative effects, is really, really good at bonding. Unstructured, unrecorded video hangouts. Guess what? If I chat something on a company Slack channel, it gets saved forever. However, let's say I have a structured ability to unstructuredly talk with my colleagues in an unrecorded video session. We can talk about work. That's great. But let's talk about other things as well. That's another opportunity to improve that bonding. And at the large healthcare company, just from the communication director, they have meetings. We call them huddles. So that's modeled on this view where you have both work and social unrecorded video time for people to get together. It's manager, employee, but it's also team building. They have meditation huddles. They have health and online parties. That is important right now. I don't think anyone solved what I call the side chat issue. More on that in a bit. In fact, more on that on my next slide. And something that was recommended is things like online team building. So these are things that can seem very dangerous. You go, okay, wow, we're one step away from Dunder Mifflin. But modern companies, I think, are solving problems in a way that keeps us away from the office environment, the office, capital T, environment. And so the Go game offered a Family Feud type environment that was meant to be humorous and fun and achieve those goals. So there are a new crop of entrepreneurial companies stepping in to fill this culture desert, as we've talked about. Yeah, so online happy hour, Zayu. Yeah, gossip.com, Glenn. So these are the entrepreneurial ideas that popped up. I want to be, probably just running up against my limit. So this is my last slide here. Okay, cool. So actually I have 2 or 3 minutes. That's good. Entrepreneurial ideas. What has come up? It's essentially every time I run up against something here, I realize that nobody's built what needs to be solved. I'm starting to identify the problems, which is step 1, and nothing at least has come to me. Maybe these exist in the marketplace, but nothing at least has come to me to solve these particular issues. So if we take a general goal of mimicking these casual office things, such as chit chat, gossip, side talk, going out to lunch together, that's just a general goal. I don't even know how you would do that, but specifically, let's imagine, let me try to phrase the problem the way I see it. All right, so I go to an online happy hour. There's 70 people there. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. It's 70 people. That's like me teaching a class. That reminds me of work. If you talk, you're on stage. That's a lot of people to judge you. So you have cocktail parties. 70 people can come to a cocktail party, no problem. Come to a Friday happy hour, no problem. But what does a cocktail party look like? Well, the cocktail party looks like people huddled together in what I'm calling at least a side chat. And currently, there's nothing that I'm aware of that allows people to get around this side chat constraint. Man, if I go to a cocktail party, I want to be able to talk to my friends. And sure, we welcome to have somebody else join us, but I don't, I want to see the people I want to see and connect with them. So there are some software out there that try to do this. There's networking, handshake. That does not work. It's not even remotely ready for prime time. Let's say we're at a conference. Let's say it's like, hey, Kyle, I've heard about you from a few other people. Your work has some overlap with mine. Would you be interested in chatting now or later? And in the real world, if you're sitting in the back of the conference room, pack up, go grab some coffee, right? As long as you're quiet going out, nobody's ever going to notice. That's not available in today's world. So this conference problem is fantastic for communication. I can communicate to you much easier than I could in the real world, but we're not able to build that informal system that I think mimics reality. So that's number 2. Number 3, how can you solve the client relations issue? The enterprise salesperson I talked to has, of course, a fantastic sense of humor, but was, I could tell he was banging his head against the proverbial wall here. And he couldn't, he's like, oh, hey, he actually was in New York seeing a client. He was like, oh, hey, we grab drinks after work. And they're like, no, no, no. I don't care if COVID rates are very low in the city. I am not going out unnecessarily. So how can we solve this issue online? There's a lot of money at stake here, people, if you can solve this problem. And then conferences. So let me cheerlead a little bit. Online conferences are, oh gosh, I was never a big conference fan before, but online conferences are a huge positive for everybody in terms of increasing the ease of communication. But what was cool about conferences? Maybe I focus a little too much on the drinking element, but let's just call it drinking with colleagues when the conference is over. So mimicking the casual environment that exists in real life, so to speak. So entrepreneurial ideas. And Shauna, I think, oh,
Awesome.
Zoompreneurs. Oh, hold on, last one real
Okay,
quick.
there you
Yeah,
go.
so if you're engineering inclined, there are a ton of overlay integration opportunities with the Zoom API. I'll pay you. I want a way for students to do a shared text document natively in Zoom so that we don't have to go to Google Documents. So there you go. There's definitely some money there as well. Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. We do have a few minutes that we just want to throw a question or two your way. The first one being, does COVID-19 provide more opportunities to be creative in your particular online educational environment? So can we still make online education, worth the money? How can we bridge that gap between the students and the experience they gain from on-campus experience versus that online environment?
Okay. All right. So this, luckily I do this for a living. So there is a number of ways to go about this. Online environment and the way I've pitched Sharif, Phil, a number of students who are formerly PMBAs who are doing online education now is, hey, look, it's reduced time in class. So less time in class and less commuting time. All right. Now, what are you giving up? You can't hang out with your friends, see people, develop new relationships as easily. And this relationship building, there's less relationship building as we've seen. So things that I have been thinking about from an administration side involve using technology to perhaps to match people. So essentially trying to create communities. Communities need a nudge, but reminding people that, oh, hey, you work in defense contracting. You're someone else is a product manager for a classic manufacturing business. Oddly enough, you guys might have some interesting work things to talk about. Or I see here that you're a Redskins fan, or the Red Feathers, or unknown, not a word I liked to begin with, but let's just say you're a football fan. Let's say you're a Baltimore fan, or a Dallas fan, for everyone can hate you. Then it would be great to have that information and be able to share it. That you were freely giving that so that that information could be shared. That you go, cool. I'm proud of being a Dallas fan, and I'm okay with using that information to connect me with other people in my education. But we have to get around that inability to just bump into people and talk the way that we did for so long. Some of these might be artificial, but they'll attempt to replicate that.
Awesome. And I think we have time maybe just for one more question. So we talked a lot about this through, the work scene and what you just covered, but how is it balancing people with their own families, working in homes all together with the responsibilities of work, so that work-life balance? How do you find that happy medium, would you think?
Oh boy. Let me say, the topic of the conference is resilience. And so let me give a shout out to my online students. And honestly, the full-time MBAs that I had in August, because I can tell, especially the online students, that family, got kids in the background, fantastic. I'm just surprised that you can make time and energy, that you care enough to come to class in this environment. That I know you spent a long time working from home, managing your family, your kids, and then you're still finding time to come for education. So outside of being, number one, really, really impressed with everyone on this front, I have found, for me at least, that taking, I might be going out a bit here, but taking structured breaks and getting over the guilt felt from structured breaks is, in a structured break, I actually watch an episode of TV, say lunch, and watch an episode of TV and not try to get back. So there's some kind of what I'll call low tech de-stress attempts.
Yep. Dr. Halliday, this is Dr. Terbish here. I want to personally thank you for joining here. So I've been wanting to ask this question here because you did an exceptional presentation here. But what about this, we call it the flipped classroom, which you probably heard from MIT, where students come into the classroom, already watched the presentation, watched everything, and they're just spending time with the faculty asking questions or working in their group meetings to save time and be concise. So that was the flipped classroom approach here. But as you have been invited by my colleague students here that have done a fantastic job here, I think George Washington University is on the onset, or is on the frontier of a new type of classroom, where you today are keynoting a presentation for a course that is watched globally here and being streamed all around the world. And it's run, designed, and developed by students. Is this the future of education? And what is your reaction to this?
Absolutely. The kind of the first part of the flipped classroom, which is something that you were a huge leader on, and is something that I think we're all still optimizing. The idea of, in a perfect world, we'd have reading one, video one, homework one. We'd come to class, we'd talk about it, we'd discuss the homework, then we'd have our breakout, and then that would lead us into our new topic, or that's the way it would work for my class, at least. So the classic flipped classroom model, and the student interaction allows for the precision, the targeting on what's needed, and how big the optimal classroom is. So is a classroom, because MOOC, the massively online whatever course, did not turn out to be the future. And so, but small classes are great, but they're not, we can have bigger classes. So students, as part of this process, are going to figure out practical things like what's needed, classroom size, et cetera. But they're also going to learn. Teaching and design is learning. And my dad was an accounting professor for a number of years, and always said that you can't know anything until you've tried to teach it. And so I think that's something that students don't get the opportunity to do. A flipped classroom simply says, participate, ask questions, think. Great, that's a huge innovation. But if you want to learn something, I couldn't remember this stuff at all from my own strategy class. I didn't remember it until I taught it, actually, like 3 times. So students that are engaged in that course design are going to naturally learn and retain the information much better.
Thank you so much. We're going to start wrapping up here, but I just wanted to personally thank you from our whole group for coming out and speaking with us today. It has been such an awesome presentation. I think I speak for everyone. We learned a lot, a whole new world that we're living in, but taking it on by storm. So thank you again for coming out today.
Thanks, Shauna. Thanks so much, Dr. Tarabishi. It feels interesting calling you that, but I really want to catch up in, well, I'd say in real life, but offline at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.